And we'll do just like last time during roll call. If you wish to have your camera turned on, just let me know and I can give you permissions to do so. Amy. Angela. Brad.
Yes, I'm here. I represent the greater Lansing area counties. I'm a retired environmental toxicologist, and I have been on the committee for, I think, 3 years now, 3 or 4 years.
You? Brad. Brad. Cynthia. Honey?
Yeah, present, I represent Wayne County with Teresa Landrum.
Daniel.
I'm here. So I'm with the Huron River Watershed Council and represent the Huron River Watershed, and specifically Ann Arbor. Of course, the Huron River has been affected by PFAS for several years.
Thank you. Gail Manswitz. Gail Dugan. Jason.
Yeah, so Jason Legowski here, representing Hull and Livingston County. Been on the COG for 3 years, I think now, and part of the leadership team with Mary and Sandy. Environmental consultant.
John said he wasn't going to be able to make it. Lauren? Lois?
I don't see her.
Lynn Knopf?
I'm here.
Thank you. Lynn McIntosh? Mary?
Mary Blanchard from Holly, Michigan, and thank you very much, Faith, for coming on and sharing your expertise.
Melissa?
I am here. I'm with the Great Lakes PFAS Action Network, and I personally am in Commerce, Michigan.
Michael? Pam? Patty?
I'm here, Patty Baldwin. I represent Cascade Township, Michigan, near the Ford Airport. I am affected resident from the contamination from the airport.
Portia? Rick Burns? Rick Radisky?
Here, and I represent Ottawa County, and I'm also on the Web Review Committee.
Roy? Samra? Sandy?
I'm here. I'm from the Belmont area, impacted from the Wolverine Worldwide Tannery Waste site, and I'm on the leadership team.
Kelly?
Hi, I'm with 2 municipalities, so the Township of Carlton and the City of Bay City, and I'm the project manager for the Middle Ground landfill that has PFAS contamination.
Stacy? Teresa?
Did you say Teresa?
I did.
Oh, Teresa Landrum, Connie's co-partner and for Wayne County, and I'm representing Detroit.
Looks like you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, yep.
Sorry about that. Hi, Tony Spaniola. I'm my second home in Oscoda is impacted by PFAS from the Air Force Base up there. We were the first PFAS site in Michigan. And I am a co-chair of the Great Lakes PFAS Action Network with Sandy.
Bill?
Hi, Bill Barnett here till 7, just before tonight. Been on the committee since it started from Cadillac. Surrounding us is Herring Township, Wexford County, just northern Michigan kind of person, and very interested in this topic and working with a group of citizens in Cadillac for a number of years here. So glad I can make tonight's meeting. Our basketball season's over. One more thing I have to attend tonight at 7. Thanks.
Did we just lose Faith?
Oh, no, I'm here.
Here.
Are you ready for me to get started?
Yep,
Yeah.
you can go ahead and share your screen.
I don't have the ability, so if you can give me that ability. I'm Faith Cullens Nobis with MSU Extension. I've been with Extension 18 years now, and the majority of the time I've been working with commercial farmers. And I still don't have sharing permission yet.
And if I can jump in real quick, Faith, I'm going to just give a plug. Faith has been jumped in both feet with PFAS and agriculture with us for like the last, has it been 2 years, 18 months?
Just over a year.
Oh my gosh, it seems like longer than that.
does.
But she's been a huge asset. And so we've been working with Faith's team at MSU to do a lot of pretty amazing things. So I was really excited to have her agree to come and share what some of the things she's doing and talk a little bit more about MSU Extension and the ways they're getting involved in this PFAS space. So thank you, Faith, for coming today.
Yes, yeah, it's been a fun career change for me. PFAS is fun. It says when I go to share, it says only meeting organizers and presenters could share. I'm not sure if there's a way, like if you go under people, maybe you could make me an organizer. I'm not sure.
They're afraid you're going to show porn. Let's be honest. That's what it is. Nobody gets to share the screen.
Bear with me, I'm working on it.
Okay, all right, I'll continue just introducing myself. So yeah, about a year ago, so maybe like last December, I had an opportunity for a career change after working in commercial agriculture. I had been on campus for a while and just really wanted to do something different. And so I went to my boss and said, I'm pretty interested in PFAS and agriculture. And he said, oh, perfect. We really need somebody. The state's been asking for our help. So I've dove in and didn't know really anything about PFAS whatsoever, but I know about farming and I have a lot of relationships in agriculture. So it's been really fun to use what I've learned working with MSU the last 18 years and now put it into something that I feel is really impactful and has a lot of opportunities here in the state of Michigan. So, okay, now I could share. Getting to know Abby very closely, as well as my partners at MPART. Okay, so you could see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm just going to start with a little bit about agriculture because I'm going in assuming you guys are not experts about PFAS and agriculture, and then I'll tell you the things that we're working on here in Michigan. These photos are from a trip that we took to Maine last August. So 5 of us went, 3 from MSU and 2 from MDARD, and they just were so welcoming and took us on all these farms. And we met with every state organization and regulators and their PFAS fund, and we learned so much from Maine. So a lot of what I talk about today is going to be based in Maine's experience. So we'll just start with how did PFAS get onto farms? Why are we concerned about this? And you've probably seen this PFAS cycle before, but what I really want to focus on is the farm. And so a lot of farms were contaminated through historic application of biosolids. We now have an interim strategy. So the biosolids that we're putting out onto farms today that farmers use for fertilizer, and it brings more to the soil than just your typical synthetic fertilizer. Those we're not concerned about today's biosolids like we were the stuff before we had an idea that this was going on. So industries, wastewater treatment plants, you name it. So tannery waste, several of you were impacted by tannery waste, paper pulp when you get to the UP or particularly in the thumb. Those were spread onto farm fields. Also, like maybe septage. I don't think that that's a huge source. Could be groundwater that they're pumping up for irrigation that they didn't know was contaminated. Could be surface water, the same. We know that rainwater is putting PFAS onto the agricultural land, but we don't really know how much. So that's not a huge contributor. And then also pesticides, which is a whole nother talk. We could spend an hour on that. We don't think that that's a huge contributor, at least when we're talking PFOA and PFOS on farmland. But what happens, the PFAS get into the soil and then the plants uptake it. Either people are eating the plants or we might be feeding them to animals and could contaminate our food supply. I want to stress this is not common. So USDA has done some surveys and it's very low contamination in the grocery stores. It does happen, but it's not common. So my message is we don't need to worry about everything that we're buying at the grocery store is contaminated. But let's talk a little bit about how the PFAS ends up getting into the food that we eat. So here's just a little diagram. Say we've got PFOS. That's the one that we really talk about the most in food because it has the most research. We know how it moves. You start getting into some of these short chain PFAS and we don't really know the impacts of them and they're moving completely different. So, but we know that the PFOS can go up from the soil or the water and be taken up into the plant. And we assign a numeric value called the transfer factor. So I'm going to show you some studies where we talk about transfer factors, and that's what it is, the movement from the soil up to the plant. And it's super complicated. It's not easy. The science is emerging and it really, the species of plant. So differential uptake by different species and then the location in the plant. For example, like carrots. A lot of the PFAS ends up in the leafy part, the green part, and that's not the part that we eat. So that's not as big of a concern. And then the chain length, has a huge impact on the rate of PFAS incorporation. Some plants really take up short chain, some will take up long chain. And then whether it's an annual crop, a perennial crop like alfalfa that we're growing out in the fields. And then there's a lot of influence about the soil type. So organic matter has been shown to bind PFAS into the soil and it's not taken up into the plants as readily. The pH, the salinity, the temperature, there's all these factors that make it really complicated to study. So when somebody calls and says, what can I grow in my garden that would be safe? That's a really complicated question because first we have to know, what type of PFAS we're talking about. What do you want to grow? What parts are you eating? It gets complicated pretty quick and the science just isn't quite there yet. But here's a couple studies, and I found this really interesting. We visited this site last year in Maine. It was on their second year, and they grew a bunch of different crops in contaminated land. So this was a farm, hunter farm, that opened up their farm for research, and they're just so generous with their time and their efforts, and they're letting University of Maine come in and do some studies. So on the y-axis here, we have PFOS, the transfer factor. Remember, that's like the movement from the soil up into the plant. And there's different species on the bottom that we'd be feeding these to animals for forage. So particularly you think about like your ruminants, so sheep, goats, cattle, dairy cows. So Timothy hay, the first cut is much lower than the second cut, which is confusing. We think it probably has something to do with plant stress or maybe the heat. And then you get into some of these orchard grasses that really take up a lot of PFAS, and we don't understand why. Good news is alfalfa is really low here, and alfalfa is what we would preferentially feed to our high-producing dairy cows. So that's really good news that alfalfa is not taking up a lot of these PFAS. This is particularly PFOS. I'm sorry if I misspoke. And then looking at some annuals, so just a wide variety between winter triticale, oats, peas, and then the oat and pea mix. So, it's kind of all over the place. It's not very predictable. We can't say this one study gave us a definitive answer. And good news, so our y-axis here is a totally different scale. The last one was, it went up to 0.25, and so now we're only on a scale of 0.08. So when we look at corn silage with the leafy greens is going to have, and the snaplage that has all the tops. So the snaplage would be the top, the ears with the husk, and a little bit of the stalk in there. So those would have the highest, but when we look at the grain, it's typically going to be non-detect in PFOS. So this is really good news for farms that have a few contaminated fields. Maybe we're not going to graze cows on those fields, but you can grow corn grain on those fields. So this type of information is really important as we help farmers decide how they're going to manage contaminated land. And then here's another study from the same farm where they had hay and they cut it 2 years in a row, and or 3 years in a row actually. And if you look at, they looked at first cutting and second cutting. So typically on forages, like in Michigan, we might get 4 cuts. But they just looked at 2 here. Maine's climate's a little bit different. And if you look at the green bars, those would be first cutting, and you come back and the second cutting is almost always quite a bit higher. So that's helpful for us to know that the second cutting is typically going to be higher in your PFAS. When you're going to feed this to animals, we could preferentially use the first cutting. And then if you look into year 3, the scale's different. For some reason, the plants really took up the PFAS in year 3 compared to year 2. And I've heard that this last year was even more dramatic. And so that's kind of frustrating from a science, because I just want to have one answer to tell farmers, plant this and you'll be fine. And unfortunately, PFAS just is not working that way. So I'd like to show this slide to farmers and just say, like, it's really complicated. Whether the PFAS are going to bind in the soil and stay there, whether it's going to move into the groundwater or it's going to be taken up into the plant. There's all these different factors, and the science is still emerging. So which PFAS are we talking about? What's the organic matter? Growing medium. I've seen some studies with hydroponics that are confusing too. The mineral content, the plant itself, how much protein is in it. Even the frequency of watering, that has an impact on how much of the PFAS stays around the root. So, and then there's the interaction of all these variables, and then we have to consider what portion of the plant is being consumed. But so this is the vegetable farm that we visited in Maine, and this data is yet to be published, but they have done quite a bit of work at this farm, and they were able to figure out, this is just for PFOS again, so we're not talking your short chain, but they were able to figure out, so little uptake of PFOS would be like asparagus, bok choy, the corn kernels, green beans, peppers, potatoes, rhubarb, broccoli. And then your riskier crops would be like your arugula, carrots, kale, Swiss chard. And then your highest risk crops would be lettuce and spinach. So on this particular farm, this farm was contaminated by a dairy farm up the road that had spread biosolids and contaminated their water. They didn't know it. They were pulling from an irrigation pond that was really high, like in the thousands for PFOS, and irrigating all their crops on it. And so they had to make some changes. As you could see the left of this picture, they've got cut flowers there. That was some of their most contaminated ground. In the background, you could see the white trailer there. That's a big frac tank of water. The state was paying for water for this farm. They had just got a new well drilled and hadn't hooked it up yet. But for, I think, a year, the state had been providing clean water so that they could keep farming. I like to use this picture just to kind of simplify things in my mind. This is a study out of China that was right next to a producer of PFAS, and they tested all these different crops. And I think this is a good graphic. When you look from left to right, you've got your grains that take up the least PFAS, and then you get to some of your roots and flower and fruit vegetables, and then your most risky would be your shoot vegetables, the leafy greens. And they also found this little graph down here on the bottom, they found that the bioaccumulation factor, so how much PFAS are stored in the plant, is the highest with short chain, and then it decreases as the long chain. So in my mind, I kind of think like the longer the chain is, the harder it is for that plant to uptake it. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's how I make it make sense in my brain. Like the plant's got to suck this bigger chemical all the way up. So, and then we start talking about the grains, and then we've got our leftover in the straw, could be fed to animals. So then what? So I'm going to shift now into talking a little bit about livestock. I have upcoming webinars. If you're interested in learning more about agriculture, I'll plug those at the end because this is just a tiny taste. So this is a dairy farm we visited in Maine. It was an organic farm. They produce raw dairy products. That's legal there in Maine. You could just stop at the farm here and fill your jugs. They have direct to consumer, and they also were a source to about 50 stores. This was a pretty new farm. They had acquired the land recently, and sludge was spread on it in the 90s. So they had contaminated fields, but they were also purchasing haylage from the farm that I showed you with all those plant trials. And so that was also really contaminated. An extra challenge on this farm is it's a grass-based dairy. And if you remember, I told you that the corn grain takes up very little PFOS into the grain. So, but that wasn't an option here. They are a forage-based farm.
Hey,
So
Faith, before you go on, it looks like
Yeah.
Sandy's got a question.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
Sandy,
sorry.
jump in.
go
I
ahead.
found that, thank you. This is really interesting because we've all been very worried about this. The graphic from China, I really liked it, but I was curious because they obviously were testing for short chain PFAS, but we're only looking at PFOS, like,
Mhm.
so we're not, so there's only like 13,992 left to look for or something, right? So, so are we just not, I'm just curious why the difference there.
Looking
Because I
at the
think we're
short
all a little
chain.
worried about short chains too.
Yeah, we just don't know enough.
Shut that, you can.
There's very little research on the short chain, and then particularly when you start looking at human health impacts. So
Oh,
going from
you
the
can-
soil to the plants to the animals, in some cases to people. I just think the science isn't quite there yet. So we could tell you, in some of these, like the shorter the chain, the more it might be taken up into the fruits and vegetables, but we don't really know what that means. So
Okay. I'll
And I
send
will
you some stuff from our friends in Wilmington. They've got a lot of research on health effects of short chains because they're
Yeah.
right there in Camore's backyard. So thank you. That helps.
yeah.
Yeah, and we do, obviously, we're not just testing for PFOS, but we're testing for, at the state, we, test for 20 to 30 to 40. Some of the researchers like at Purdue and Colorado and Maine are testing for more, but certainly not everything. So to your point, there's still stuff we're missing along the
Mhm.
way.
When you look at food regulations, so Maine is the only state that has anything, and it's only on PFOS. And the European Union has 4 chemicals that they're looking at. So, yeah, there's a lot to be done.
Mhm.
Okay, so their milk levels at this farm their first test was 1,690 parts per trillion. So Maine's action level currently is 210. And we could talk about the action levels. It's kind of regulatory. So what they figured out was that contamination was only from 40 bales of hay that they had got and was causing their milk to be this sky high. And they were notified because the farmer that sold them the hay called and said, look, you might want to test your milk. And people had been asking. So they tested it. It was voluntary. They pulled their products off the shelves immediately. But they had the problem. They were sourcing to 50 stores and they didn't want to lose their market share. So what they ended up doing was they purchased a new herd and brought them in. They knew that they were clean. They tested and they fed those cows clean feed while they depurated their old herd. So they were able to continue selling their product. they did decide the sheep and the hogs that they were raising, just that was too much hassle. So they quit raising those. And here's a graph. So showing that first test of milk and then over time. So that first test was January 2022. And then, by August, well, actually, if you look, probably August, they're consistently below the action level in Maine. So you could depurate cows pretty quickly if you put them on clean feed and water. They had some spikes here when they didn't know exactly what they were feeding, or they'd hit a spot in their bunk that had contaminated feed. There's one of these spikes was also when they brought in new animals into the herd that had been grazing on contaminated land. And then when they had their calves, they brought them in and they will dump the PFAS out pretty quick. So I think they said it's like 10 milkings and those animals will be clean again. But so this farmer came up with like this system to track with colors of tape on all the bales to track where he thinks the PFAS is in those fields. And he did struggle a bit because sampling the hay, the detection limits were pretty high compared to sampling milk. And so when they thought they were feeding clean feed, they would still get spikes in their milk. So that was a challenge that they talked to us about. And they were testing every 2 weeks. And then when they started getting close to this action level, they were testing every 3 days, their milk. And so now they're still routinely testing. And they came up with this label on their milk. So you could see the yellow there. It says PFAS tested. It doesn't say clean or anything like that. It just says PFAS tested. I can't actually remember what else it says on there, but and they have a whole blog on their website about their journey and where their samples are now. So that was a really interesting trip and getting to talk to the farmer about how they worked through that. So just a little bit else on the mitigation strategies and takeaways, because this is really shaping how we're approaching farms here in Michigan. So Maine really stressed that soil levels are the most predictive impact from feed onto their cattle, because non-detect hay, their method detection limit was 150 parts per trillion. And so that would still cause an issue in the milk. So they really stressed you've got to know what's in the soil and in the water. And that's the approach that we're taking as well. And also the snaplage, the ear, the kernels have very little PFOS accumulation. So in cattle in particular, if I had more time, I could show you, but in dairy, they have this panel of like 45 different chemicals, and PFOS is by far the predominant one in milk. So that's definitely the one that we're concerned about. And then they have cholestyramine being researched there. A lot of the farmers that we talk to are on treatment. And then also they're doing sheep and dairy cattle studies, trying to bind the PFAS and keep it from getting into the muscle and into the milk. So I thought that was really interesting. So livestock research, we're doing some here. We know that PFAS can accumulate in livestock. We don't know much about the health impacts to the animals. There's really no data out there about long-term exposure in livestock, and we don't have a reliable model to predict PFAS from the blood samples. So Michigan State is working on that, because it'd be really nice to just be able to take a blood sample from the animal and predict what's in the muscle or in the milk. We need a better understanding how PFAS accumulate in the animals. For example, PFOA doesn't appear to accumulate in beef really at all. So Maine showed us some data where animals were drinking water with high PFOA and the beef was clean. So we need to understand this as well. Livestock will depurate when put on clean feed and water, but we don't really have a great way to predict it yet. So it's different by species and by production level. Dairy cows will get rid of it pretty quick because they prioritize putting it into the milk. So yeah, we just finished our beef cattle trials. There'll be some exciting stuff coming out. And then Maine has that binder study in progress. So I'm going to shift now and talk to you about what we're doing here. So MSU and MPART, so mainly Eagle and MDARD and DHHS, we're all working together to come up with a strategy for working with farms. We are starting work with farms. But our base of the strategy is education. So I've been going out, I think my next slide is like all these different talks I've been doing, just letting farmers know that we're here, we're working on it, if they've got questions, and a lot of them do. So, and then we could do a risk assessment. We've gone through that process with several farms, sampling soil and water. We've done several farms that have either approached us and said, I've got some concerns. Could you do some sampling? And then we also have a project I'll show you in just a second. And then follow-up discussions. What do your results mean? Because if any of you have looked at lab results, they're very confusing. And then mitigation strategies. And we're working on funding for infrastructure changes. We're not going to have the $60 million that Maine had in there, but if we can help farmers continue to farm despite having contaminated water or whatever it is, that will go a long way in this ag strategy. So some things that we're doing on the education side, we have a website, PFAS and Agriculture. I've been just writing a lot of popular press articles, trying to just get on people's radar. PFAS and ag, we've got one about biosolids. We've got one about collecting water samples. I do a lot of interviews for radio and print articles, and then we've created a lot of handouts getting out into people's hands. So either talks I do, or I can send it with my colleagues. I heard somebody from Wexford County is on here, so we participated in the resource fair last year, and then we did webinars aimed at the Wexford County community just to help with general education on PFAS. And then train the trainer activities within MSU. So I'm working like with the master gardeners or with the food safety people and training them about PFAS. So either they feel comfortable providing that education or they know the work that we're doing and they'll invite me into their meetings. Here's like a short list of the things we've done in the last couple months. I visited the meat industry conference in St. Louis, or no, that was in Kansas City. I did the Michigan On-Site Wastewater Conference, the Shepherd's Weekend Conference, the Michigan Horticultural Days, MSU's Grazing Group, Master Gardeners, and then in this next week we're doing a integrated pest management update, and my colleague Katie is going to the UP to do the Ag for Tomorrow conference, I think tomorrow. So we're getting out in front of a lot of farmers and we get a ton of questions from farmers. And our sessions are really well attended. It's been surprising. And then I want to talk about this project to figure out what we're calling baseline. I think that's acceptable wording, baseline PFAS in agriculture. So if we're talking to farmers about, their land being impacted or contaminated, we really need to understand how much PFAS are on traditionally farmed land. Because as I said, they're also getting some PFAS from chemicals or from pesticides that they're applying and from precipitation. We know it's there, it's in forested areas. So in last year, we selected sites that had no previous land applications of septids, biosolids, paper pulp. They were at least 2 miles from a known PFAS site. And we got 15 samples in 13 counties. And I really need to get the Southeast Michigan. So I heard a lot of you guys on this call from Southeast Michigan. So if you have any contacts with farmers, I would love to get down there and sample a few more. So we used method 1633, looked at 40 different chemicals, and we also did some soil typing. We presented the farmers with a letter about what is PFAS, what is our project, how will their privacy be protected, and then we followed up with the report on the right, explaining what PFAS are, again, what we're doing, what those results might mean. Privacy of the producers was ensured. That's very important to farmers. Everybody's a little gun shy. So I had lots of my colleagues help me. Some I didn't even know the farms. My colleague just sent me like, here's a pin, go sample this field. And then I was able to work with them. And then while I was on farm, we also had a dairy farmer say, hey, I'm a little worried about this water here. So I sampled that. We sampled irrigation water. And then a couple of biosolid fields as well, I'll show you. And funding for this project was provided by MPART. So here's what we found. So this says 17 low-risk fields because I combined a few fields I did earlier in the summer that still met the parameters. So out of the 17 fields, 4 samples had no PFAS whatsoever. So the range in all the samples, the highest that we got was 1.16 parts per billion in total PFAS from those 40 chemicals. So that's pretty encouraging. We had 8 samples with no detections of PFOS, and the highest that we detected was 0.51. So again, that's really encouraging, and 10 samples with no PFOA. We had 6 different chemicals that were detected, and the max was 5 in one sample. And then this, you guys might find this interesting. We had 3 farmers that say, oh, you know what, actually, we took biosolids back in the 80s. They weren't known to be impacted, but the farmers were just worried because they've heard all this. And so we had one of their fields that had no applications, and then we did a biosolid field. And they looked pretty good. So we did detect 5 compounds in 2 of the samples, but PFOS was the only detection in one field. And the highest PFAS out of the sum of 40 was 0.89, which is very comparable to the forested study that Eagle did several years ago. I will say they were all slightly elevated compared to the neighboring field, but not concerningly so. So the farms that we're working with could either come to us directly, so they read my articles, or they're at a conference and come up and say, I want to work together, or we're working jointly with MPART on farms that they have concerns about. So right now we've got a handful that are in the lineup and helping these farmers do education and risk assessments and soil and water sampling, and then with some mitigation strategies. And lastly, I'm happy to take questions, but want to plug our webinar. So if you're interested in learning more about agriculture, or if you've got people that are farming and you think that they would like this information, we're going to do 4 webinars starting next week. So the first one will be introduction, so a little bit expanded on what we did today. And then we'll start going into more details on the crops and then the livestock. And then we're going to have one just addressing biosolids and septage. And they will be recorded and posted on the website. So I can send this out to the group as well. So what questions do we have? I see Connie's hand.
Okay. Yeah, just a quick question. What about bioconcentration as the cattle continue to eat, even if it's a small amount of PFOS in the grass or the foraging, it'll accumulate over time in their body.
Mm-hmm. It does,
So,
yes, and it's in their muscle.
So we could still be eating contaminated meat.
Yes, that could happen. And so I don't think it's widespread on low soils with low PFAS, just because the USDA has looked a few times and it's typically been like 99% with no detections at all. So I don't personally think that that's widespread. I think it's when we're dealing with impacted fields. And when you think about the life cycle of like a beef cow, we're talking 18 months. So that probably has a big factor on it. So maybe if they were on that low level field for 10 or 12 years, you'd probably get more bioaccumulation. But I don't know that that's ever been looked at. That would be interesting.
Well, what about the dairy cattle? They're more than 18 months.
They are, yep. So I think probably relatively it's still, so the average dairy cow lasts about 2 lactations, so that's 4 years old for your average cow. So it's a possibility. My personal opinion is that it's probably low risk because that milk would be blended. We're not doing direct to farm sales here. In Michigan, you shouldn't be doing direct to farm sales. There hasn't been a lot of work done looking at milk, but Consumer Reports did one a few years ago, and they did find some detections. It was honestly lower than I would have expected. They just went to the grocery store and sampled some, but that's probably been like 5 years now. So I don't know of other work.
I thought, Faith, that MSU has got some limited research on dairy cow or on lactation. They weren't dairy cows, they were cattle. that were lactating with their young calves. So I thought there was going to be potentially some correlation to that, but maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't directly apply to dairy cows.
The beef cattle work?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how applicable that is. I haven't seen exactly what was done.
The data.
Yeah.
But with with cows that are lactating, they're going to be more likely to rid their bodies of the PFAS with the lactation, right?
Yeah, you won't get as much accumulation if they're lactating because they put it into the milk. Yeah. Rick,
Thanks, Faith.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a better answer. Rick, I see your hands up.
Yes, interesting information. Thank you for presenting it. Question: when you are talking about the PFAS in different meat and dairy and the vegetable products, are you sampling right at the farm, or are you sampling at a grocery store? Or?
Well, MSU is not sampling. We're not dipping our toe into that yet. But when you talk about like the USDA studies, they're going to the grocery store. And then that work in Maine is direct from the farm. So it's kind of both. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And then, as far as the biosolid studies that you're doing, are you finding it mostly in the I guess the organic layer of the soil, or is it percolating down through? It probably varies by the carbon number and things like that, chain length.
Yeah, by carbon number and the soil type. So
Okay.
if you've got like a heavier clay soil, then the PFAS are going to stay up top, and they're typically not even going to go down to the groundwater. We see that across Michigan. But if it's a sandier soil, more porous soil, then it'll definitely move through faster.
Okay. And then if you have contamination and you apply, if you have contamination from past biosolids and you apply cleaner biosolids, does that gradually displace the contamination? Or because I know that the wastewater treatment plants are now testing for PFAS, and you would think that the current applications are a lot better than the ones from the past.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty complicated question because depends on, what was applied back in the 70s is still sitting there, or has it already escaped? I don't know, Abby, if you have more thoughts on that one.
I think that would be entirely site specific. Christian's probably got some ideas on his work with biosolids, but I think that's speculation on our part to try to figure out. I don't think, unless you're actually removing a layer of soil, that you could have any dilution, because the old stuff would still be there unless something was taken away or you had something actually taking it up out of the soils. But I don't know. Christian, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you're right that it would all be pretty speculative on our part, but yeah, it'd be highly site dependent, but you are adding new material into the soil, so there is a dilution question there, but I don't think there's been any research or anything on our part to have any real idea of what the situation would be.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or discussion about farming?
Hey, Faith, are these slides available to the group?
Yes. Kelly has the PDF, so.
Perfect.
And then I'll send out the webinar flyer too. Put in the chat. Okay. Well, thank you guys very much for having me. I'm really excited to be able to work in this field and help farmers and do what we can to provide a safe food supply here in Michigan.
Yeah, thank you, Faith, for coming. I know everybody really was geeking out. Even though you couldn't see their faces, they were geeking out on this because this is really good stuff. So thanks for all your hard work in this space, and we will tune in next week to see you on another webinar. All right. And feel free to stay if you want, Faith. You don't have to. Don't feel obligated. All right, Kelly and Jason, go ahead and take it away then.
Yeah, so do we have an update from anybody on the website review subcommittee?
Yes, we met today. This is Brad Venman. We met today and didn't initially, Kelly said we didn't have a lot to talk about, but we ended up filling up the whole hour. So it was quite a productive conversation. And I don't want to steal the thunder from the PFAS Awareness Week discussions, but one of the things that Kelly has asked us to do is to review the state of New Jersey has in place a new PFAS visualization tool that combines sampling results from their Private Well Testing Act that requires, it's part of their New Jersey Consumer Information Law, it requires testing of private well water during sales of property or leases, rentals, to ensure parties are involved are aware of the water quality. And so the grids there on the visualization tool are actually a 2-mile grid, and the different colors represent the percentage of exceedances of one or more of the MCLs at times. So it's quite interesting, and it would be something that we wouldn't mind trying to move forward. But obviously, with their law to collect to require testing of residential wells, they're a step ahead of us, and that's likely to be a big hurdle for Michigan to implement something like that. But not doesn't mean we can't try. So,
Michigan
we're
have
going to be
a
doing some
radon?
additional research on that over the next month to see if we can find other states and see if there's other examples that we might be able to borrow or learn from too. That's it.
Thank you. Any of the other three subcommittees meet preventative membership or the engaging the public?
Jason, I think I can answer that. I don't think any of the groups met. And I think we had talked about the fact that we might need to look into finding out who is even still interested and in what groups. So we'll be exploring that more in the future.
Yep, we talked about that the last time.
Yeah, thank you.
So Kelly, back to the agenda real quick. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Rick?
Kelly, can you set me up to share the screen? I've got one slide or one bit of information I wanted to share.
Should be all set.
Yep, just a minute. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, PFAS Awareness Week. We had that, we were discussing that idea last year, and Michigan State has went ahead and had their own internal PFAS Awareness Week. It's next week. It coincides with the agricultural seminars that we heard about, but I thought this was a nice example of what a university could do as far as different kinds of events. They're having a movie night showing dark waters, and they're having the agricultural ones and a basic PFAS webinar, and they actually have a PFAS club. I didn't know that either, but anyway, they're having various events during next week, and they are definitely interested in having the events for our PFAS Awareness Week in September. But I just thought it was interesting because I've been talking to universities about having PFAS Awareness Week, and MSU, it was already having the agricultural week coming up, and they decided to turn that into something bigger. But this is a nice example, and I'm certainly going to use it about different things that the universities can do, and all of these events are open to the public. And I think a lot of them, at least the agricultural ones, if you register for them and you can't make it, they're going to be recorded. So I think that's a nice feature too. But you know, they have QR codes, and one of the things that we talked about in the in our discussion on Monday was to have a QR code for PFAS Awareness Week that would link to the Eagle website. I think Kelly said she'd help us with that, but we'd have all the lists of different activities on the MPART website. So you'd be able to, you know, click on that, and then you go to the screen, and it would say that, you know, we're doing this in Grand Rapids and this in Ann Arbor and that sort of thing. So, but I thought that was a really good thing, because, you know, it's definitely a way to raise awareness on campuses with something like this. See, how do I stop? Okay. We had a long discussion about a variety of topics, and as far as events, Dan was talking about some interesting things in the Ann Arbor area. They were talking about renting a theater and having 4, I guess, big names in the PFAS world, and have a, you know, not a movie night, but just a discussion night at a movie theater, renting a movie theater, and then, you know, having a panel discussion with 4 leaders in the PFAS field, which I thought that was interesting. Also talking about a potential kayaking event and things like that. So we're talking about a variety of different types of events, and those are just some examples. And then we started talking about communications, how to communicate things. And one of the areas that we got into was, you know, how to communicate to realtors, and, you know, the idea of well testing, and how a lot of people, when there's a PFAS site and MPART wants to sample people's wells, there's, you know, talking about 50%. 50% of the people are interested, and I just sat in on the Ford Milan site, and there was I think 11 people that were contacted, and only 2 or 3 were interested there. So how do we get through PFAS awareness? How do we get you know, that out there? And with the real estate, we're kind of trying to figure out what the real story is, because we've heard different things about whether it's required to you know, disclose environmental issues. A lot of people are afraid to sample, because then they have to disclose it, and, you know, they might not sell their house, or it might affect property values. So we were kind of looking that up in the web review committee, and it looks like Laura, the licensing and regulation site, is the site that you know, licenses realtors. Maybe somebody from Laura could come and talk to us about, you know, what is the requirements for disclosure on PFAS testing. So I think that would be a good thing to track down. But we certainly want to, you know, focus on the well testing. And then we also heard that MDHHS has a table that they can set up, and they have focus areas concerning water, which is the drinking water, fish and game, foam, and consumer products. And if we wanted to have any kind of event and wanted the MDHHS table or MDHHS representative, they'd be willing to have them present. They wanted at least 2 weeks notice for that. But I think that would be really good, you know, if you had some kind of a talk or some kind of a presentation events that you would include MDHHS, because they have a lot of materials that they're working on, and it's just good to show that the state is, you know, doing outreach and on these issues. So think that's about it. We're quite a ways away from September, but as we get plans together, we'll certainly bring them up in the meeting. And if any of the impacted communities, any counties, anybody here that wants to help sponsor some kind of event, please contact me or any member of the committee, and we can help you with that. But I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that the health department has a nice resource. We're going to be seeing some of the materials in the future, but that would be a good booth, but a good table to have at these kind of events. So, any questions? All right, that's it for me.
Thanks, Rick. There seems to be some similarities, I guess, between radon testing and PFAS. So it's not.
We discussed that too, and we don't know if there's a county-wide requirement or I'm pretty sure in like in Ottawa County, there's a certain areas that they require the testing, and other areas they don't. So I don't think it's a requirement for all houses. We want to try and look into that. So.
Yeah, if you Google it, there's no Michigan requirement, but it's highly recommended and is predominantly kind of standard practice. So hopefully we can get that kind of level of awareness with PFAS.
Right, and I know like the Grand Rapids Board of Realtors really pushes the radon testing, and a lot of the the inspection companies that do a inspection of your house for mechanical issues, they will also bring in a radon test. And my son bought a house a couple of years ago, and first thing the person did was set up a radon meter, and then he went around the house and did all of his other inspections, because you have to integrate a sample over a certain time. But there's a certain part of Ottawa County that it's required in. And I don't know if it's required by the bank or it's required by the realtors, but I know there's areas that it's required, and then like in Allendale where I'm at, it's not required. So there's geology that's been looked at related to the burial of sediments that have the radon in, that's allowing it to seep up through the ground, and they pretty well have those mapped out.
Thanks again, Rick.
Sure.
So what's next on our agenda, Kelly? Abby, is this you?
Yeah, we're going to talk about a couple of new sites, actually more than a couple of new sites. We have been busy adding new MPART sites. If you're still getting our updates, you'll see those out every Monday. So we've got the Sanico North landfill out in Unica, out in Ottawa County. Former Fenville City Dump out in Fenville and Allegan County. And some of these are coming in through various ways of either doing routine sampling or doing baseline environmental assessments or other types of information that we get. Dexter Lock is in Grand Rapids. I know that was a brownfield site at one point. The Ford Milan is in Milan down in Monroe and Washtenaw counties. We just had a call with local officials on that one. We've got one at 3390 Southwest Bayshore Drive in Traverse City. And one at 22-5 Coates Avenue in Reed City in Osceola. So those are all on the MPART website. You can check them out for more details. But at this point, all of them are, it's becoming a little bit more routine, which is good. We want this integrated into the thing. And every once in a while, we get a little pushback from locations that don't want to be an MPART site. And we have to tell them this is not a regulatory obligation. This is just a part of our transparency and trying to get this information out for everybody. So they They don't like being on the list.
We'll have to
So-
get out like jacket lapels or something cool when you get on the list. Like a
I
nice
know it.
banner for your town or something. How many are
I
we up
got-
to now, Abby?
I got PFAS. Let's see, what was it? 339 MPART sites and 39 areas of interest.
Wow.
So
Okay.
almost 380.
We could hit
So-
400 by the end of the year.
Easy,
Sad.
easy. So Kelly, I don't know if you want to take this one or you want me just to start walking through this.
Nope, I'll let you start walking through it.
Okay, stop me when I forget something. So all of these sites that come through, every time a new site shows up on the list, we always go through and talk to the project team who gets assigned to these and say, okay, is there anybody around these sites that could be at risk for having PFAS in their drinking water? Is there any residential homes that we should be proactively looking at? Because we rarely get good data or complete data or have a good understanding of even sometimes groundwater flow direction. And so we have to understand which houses might be at risk. How do we, try to get and sample those homes as much as we can, because we want to, obviously target the homes that are closest to the site and the ones that are shallowest in the groundwater as a starting point. So we will identify those wells, we will mail those letters. If we don't hear back and we start going out, we'll, some access agreements might be received, and then we'll go out and actually do a round of sampling. But while we're out there, we'll be knocking on doors, leaving the door hangers to get people to call back and schedule sampling. We're not getting good response rates doing this. We've revised our letters to be more user-friendly and less bureaucratic. And so Miranda and Kelly and Amy worked on the letter that you see at the left. It basically just says, this is Eagle offering to test your well water for free at no cost to you. Your home was selected because it's near a location where PFAS may have been used or released. Why do we want to test your water? It's to help your well. Testing your well helps you to understand if PFAS are present and if any action is needed to protect your health. So very basic letter. And even with this kind of a letter with, hey, it's free, we get really bad response rates. So check this out. So we need your help. We're looking for ideas. That's the intent today is let's talk about ideas. So Heartland Fire Training Center, we sent 14 letters. We got 3 that responded. So less than 21%. Milton Township Fire Department, we sent 16 letters and we got 1 letter back so far. That's 6%. National Airport site, we sent 5 letters. And I think local health went out and knocked on the doors, 0%. Broomfield Valley Mobile Home Park area, 17 letters sent and only 1 responded. So this is not, now these are not high intense. These are not the Grand Rapids. These are not the Ann Arbor. These are not Southeast Michigan where people might be more engaged and more aware. These are just average places around the state. So this is kind of what we're dealing with. And, it's not, I think there might be some PFAS fatigue out there. What we've heard is, obviously there's a good chunk of people that just don't trust anybody, let alone the government. There's apathy. I know in looking at my kids' piles of mail, they don't open the mail. They don't open the mail. So there's fear that the results might impact those property values. We hear that over and over again. And then some of these areas we know we're targeting for sampling are seasonal areas where people don't live there year round. So that might be an issue. We might have to go back later. The house already has a filter or they're going to purchase a filter, so they don't want to bother with the testing. And then there's other things, people have always got an excuse, but how do we get them to respond to us? So that's our question. Have we got one more slide, Kelly? Yeah. So these are the ideas we've thought about, but we wanted your input and to have some additional discussion. Would a postcard be better than something they have to open? If you had a postcard, it's on two sides, they're not actually opening the mail, they just look at it and glance at it and go, oh yeah, I want a free test. Or a QR code might work better with the younger crowd. Would it help if the form was electronically fillable from that QR code so they didn't have to submit anything to us? They just fill it out on their phone, boom, it's done. Other ideas, because we need to change something, because obviously we're not actively being able to engage with residents if we can't even get them to agree to testing. So, and do we have one more slide, Kelly, or is that it? I'm thinking this will be a good point to stop and have discussion. Yeah, so let's have this discussion. What do you guys think? So, Lynn? Can you unmute yourself, Lynn? Or almost.
I'm sorry, my computer's glitching. I was wondering, would it help to sponsor before these go out any kind of, what is the expense regarding showing like a couple of the films or an interview with, I can't remember his name, the gentleman with the farm that's no longer usable, the dairy farm. A little shock and awe. I don't know what I would call that, but
yeah,
I think that could
free
get
exposure to us or something.
Yep.
I mean, it would be hard to do it for, a lot of sites, but I mean, it's always an idea, right? You got to get it out there somehow.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Mary?
I am not very technologically inclined, but I have found that sometimes the electronic fillable type things that you can do right on your phone does come in handy.
Okay. So you think the electronic form might be a help to that?
I'm just saying that for somebody who's not really great, is yeah, I think it could be helpful.
Do you think people are more likely to look at a postcard than to open mail?
That I don't know. I personally, I think sometimes postcards, if I get a postcard, I just kind of toss it if but if it has the state of Michigan thing on it, I guess I would be more inclined to look. If you had an actual insignia on there or something.
Okay.
And a QR code. I'm not
not a QR
with
code.
that too much at all.
Okay. All right. Dan, what do you think?
Yes, I think we talked about this a little bit during that PFAS Awareness Week work group meeting. So we had a survey on a different issue that went out to I think it's about 4,000 landowners in the watershed. And I think it was about 4 pages. So it was not a super short survey. We're getting a decent response rate on that. I think it's fair to say we're doing basically 3 waves. So there's basically a postcard with a QR code that has a link to an electronic form, but then that's also serves kind of as like a a primer for the actual survey. Like, this is coming, don't throw this away. This is not like a sales pitch, etc. And then the actual survey hits the mailbox, and then there's a reminder postcard. And then we may do another postcard. We're not sure. We worked with U of M to design a survey process. There's a whole body of research around this, and for most projects like this, it seems like there's kind of diminishing returns after you do 5 waves of mailers, but 5 seems like a lot to me, but that is what the data shows, is that that's what people need. The electronic fillable form is a good idea. I think about half of our responses are coming through the electronic form, either through the QR code on the postcard or in the actual survey. People just don't want to bother mailing a physical thing, even if they're getting the actual letter. Yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. There's no, my sense is that this is getting harder for everybody for reasons that are probably bigger in social scale than I can understand. But
yes. Well, yeah, we've inundated ourselves with so much information, we can't bear to open one more thing that requires our attention. So, yeah, okay. Sandy.
Yeah, I actually think all of these are really good ideas. I think starting with a postcard and then following up with a letter with a QR code on the postcard that takes them to electronic fillable form would be really good. Even if it's just to opt out so that you don't keep bothering people, I think would be good. I wonder on the letter if you could do some FAQs. Like sometimes I know in talking to people in my community, they thought that having water testing was going to be this long, arduous process. And it's really, coming and taking water out of your tap and leaving. So maybe letting people know that, this will be kept private, those kind of things. Just under some FAQs in the letter may be helpful. And maybe a little bit about kind of, this can impact, you'd have to massage it, but this can impact your health and the health of your children and, people who are vulnerable. So that's why we feel like it's important. And we are here to help you and do this for free. And the other thing I think people have talked about, I wonder if we could start doing some public service announcements just throughout the state about why this is important. And even if we could find ways to do it so it doesn't look like it's attached to government, it's just like people helping people kind of movement,
I like that. Well, and I think that fits right in with our PFAS Awareness Week, right?
Yes, yes.
All
And
of
then
these things beget each other.
The other piece of research that, I'm a behavior analyst, so I know how to manipulate behavior with the best of them, is if you give people a reward to start out with, they are much more likely to respond. That's why you always get those envelopes that give you the little name tags or whatever they have on them, or a little piece of candy. So if you can figure out some little thing that you stick in there in those letters, people will feel this guilt and obligation to respond. So
Okay. I don't know if we can mail candy bars, but yeah, something. Thanks, Sandy. Rick.
Yes, I like the postcard idea. I think you could get a lot of information on the postcard. I mean, you don't want to be real dense, but I think you can have some of that. I like the first part of that letter that you showed. It's not saying that you're offering a free test because there's PFAS nearby, and I think that's a nice way to do it, and then have the QR code or have a link that they can click on or something. But yeah, I think you get letters, and I don't open a lot of my mail, and although if I got something from the state, I'd probably open it just because it's it's not selling me windows or car warranties or things like that. So but anyway, I think that postcard might be good, and then follow it up with the letter like Sandy said. But yeah.
Do you think we need something on the outside of the envelope? We even thought about putting a time sensitive information or a free PFAS testing or something on the outside of the envelope just to get their attention that this isn't junk mail. I don't know how you do that without looking like junk mail, but
Well, if it comes from the state, it's
how
probably
many people know who Eagle is? Maybe half.
Does it have the state of Michigan
Nobody does.
logo?
Right?
Does it have that, a lot
I
of
think
people
it's
know the logo.
I think it's got Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy on the envelope.
Okay, yeah. Well, that would be something that you could test, just with a group of people. But yeah, I think if it, had free water tests, that might, state of Michigan free water tests, that might help. But then I also wanted to, Sandy mentioned about a sweetener. I know there's this, I just found out about it. I didn't know it existed until today, but there's a program called MyChem where the state asks to test people's blood, and you get a $75 gift card if you participate. So,
Oh, yes. Yes. You have to be invited though, I think.
no, I know, but you could say that you're invited to have your water tested, and here's a $50 gift card. I mean, that sounds like a lot of money and everything, but to if you get more compliance and it costs you maybe $200, that's being able to characterize the plume for $200 is really not an expense at all. I mean, that's well worth your money. So
yeah, true.
But yeah, there's lots of things to think of, and I just had another. It's kind of a related question, but if we're pushing this effort to get people to test their water, you're obviously going to be getting people that are hiring a lab or using Cyclopure to test their water just because they're concerned. What do they do with the test result? Do they tell the health department? Do they tell MPART? If they tell the health department, what do they do? Do they get a water filter? I've got just some questions because I would imagine that this will result in some people, especially since you had the comparison study to say I'm going to test my water with Cyclopure, and let's say that you find 10 parts per trillion of PFOS in there or something, or PFOA. What happens? Do they go to the local health department? What do they do? What do you recommend they do?
That's probably a really good idea to make sure we've got something on our website for people to fall back on, a list of resources. If I've tested my well, now what?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Because that's, it's going to depend on how they came to us. If they've tested their well and they're not part of an investigation area, it's going to be a little different than if we tested their well and they are part of an investigation area. Right. So, yeah.
But I think, you'll get, since, word travels by mouth and everything, by people talking, but you'll find out that, there's a PFAS site across the street, and, you might be 3 or 4 houses away from where they're testing, and you may decide to go have your well tested just because you're close. And then, what do you do with that result? What happens if, you find like 4 houses away, somebody's got PFAS in their well?
Right.
I think that I like the idea of having, something on the website about, you have PFAS in your well, what should you do? But I think we should also put some thought into, you may be getting requests from people that spend the money and you have their water tested, and then they turn to, Eagle, and I don't know what kind of a response they'll get, or the health department. So
yeah. All right. Well, that's something we definitely can start brainstorming about. I think that would be a great thing for a couple of these different subcommittees to work on. It'd be talking more about, one, what kind of resources should be on the website, too, how to organize those, and what kind of FAQs we'd like out there for resources.
Because if somebody spends the money and they've got PFAS in their water, and you say, well, tough, you're not on the site, I don't think that would go over very well. So I think there's some thought should be put into this. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah. Good suggestion, Rick. Thanks. Jason.
Yeah, a couple of things. You should probably steal some envelopes from the Department of Treasury and put time sensitive on the envelope. So that's my humorous comment. But the other one is people may be seeing the electronic form as being time consuming. I don't know how, because I'm not a lawyer, to get around informed consent. But if you can put all the information that's in the access agreement in the letter, and their response is either yes or no, might get you more response or a better response rate.
Okay. I think I'd have to go back and look at the access request form, but it's, you know, it definitely could be something that's a fillable form right from a QR code here.
Yeah, I have a consultation with our ArcGIS person that could potentially set up called ArcGIS survey, I think, to kind of design it for us that way, and then it could plot those locations out for us as well.
Oh, that'd be cool. Okay. Like it. Joe?
Yes, thank you. I was gonna talk before Rick did, but actually I had the same idea Rick had. That is, we need to do something better to improve that response percentage to be able to collect the useful data, and that the gift card idea, I love it. I'm sure response rate would go up significantly. So if we need to know the response, we know that, and to do what we want to do, then obviously let's give them some incentive, whether it's whatever, $50 or $100 or whatever. If it's worthwhile, I really recommend that we do something positive.
Well, that's going to depend on the budget. We'll see how this year looks before we get too excited. But yeah, I'd love to think about that. What is available and how would we do it? I mean, you would think that free testing for your family's health would be enough of a free incentive. We're offering, and maybe that's what we need to put in the letter. Eagle is offering you a free, $290 PFAS test.
Exactly. Say what this could cost them. And this is only, I think that's exactly what you do. Appeal to that. And then maybe you don't offer the gift card to everybody. You say the first 4 people that sign up get this much,
Yeah.
Anyway, let's turn it around to make it a positive thing, so people will respond.
Right.
Okay. Free tests worth almost $300.
Yep.
I like
or like
it.
Daniel put in the chat, a raffle kind of thing, for a bigger prize. Right. Free parks admission for the entire summer in any Michigan State park or something, So I think you got to come up with some incentive for people, though.
That's
I was just on a call about how we undercharge for state parks, so by a lot compared to other states. So maybe in the future that'll be something more than $15 or.
Yeah. Get free PFAS testing and septic tank inspections. How about that? All right.
It all depends on how badly we need their participation,
A lot of this is proactive. So a little bit of data goes a long way, but ultimately it's for their public health. So my concern is not so much that we have the data, it's that they have the data, that they get tested at some point. If they don't want us involved in their data, then they should collect it themselves. But I don't know that people understand that part of it. And so I think it's that, you know, trying to get people to understand PFAS and the potential long-term effects. I think it's the whole goal of the PFAS Awareness Week. So we've got lots to work towards. All right. So we'll keep working on that. We'll give you guys some updates on how we're coming. Jason, anything else on your end?
Not on our end. Well, if anyone's got topics they want us to consider for the upcoming meetings, please share those with Mary, myself, or Sandy, and we'll see what we can do.
Tony has a question.
Yeah, on that point, a few months ago, I had asked for a presentation about the GSI, and I had heard some rumblings that that had been rejected. I just wanted to check to see what the status of that is.
Yeah, not rejected, postponed. At this point, we're not really ready to talk about it. It's just too early in the process. Nothing's been decided, I guess. So, that is something that's still under consideration. They're still wrangling with what that will mean and all of the potential downstream consequences. So we're, you know, they have not made any decisions and they're still internally discussing. Because I'm assuming you were talking about setting new GSI criteria, right?
No, I was just talking about an informational presentation on the GSI.
Because
yeah.
we did one last summer with Kevin Cox came and gave a presentation on how the GSI was formulated and stuff. And that was pretty technical, but we certainly, you know, if you just want to.
No, I'm not talking about how it's formulated. I'm talking about how it's you know, how you test for it. You know, where the tests are taken, and the purpose of it for the protection of fish, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. So the actual field implementation of where you would test for a groundwater surface water interface.
Yeah.
And the thing. Okay. That's a different request than what we thought you were asking for. So, okay, let me go back and talk to, because we've probably got at least a couple of good sites that might have really good demonstrations of GSI type investigations that might be worthwhile to have somebody come and present on their data so that you can see that in action. Okay. So, all right. Yeah, apologies. That's not what we thought you were asking for. So
the other would be good too, but obviously I understand that takes a little longer. But I think this should be fairly simple.
Yes. Okay, we can do that. Actually, I just saw some really cool drone footage of somebody that went out with a heat sensor. I think it was a FLIR camera off of a drone. And
really?
while the ice was out, they could literally see where that groundwater was entering the surface water. And you could kind of see where that looks like you had a heat signature from
Sure.
You know, some contamination coming in from a particular site. So we've got a number of I know we've done that at a couple of different locations, but I don't think we've got any other data with that one. So
cool. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Tony. Any other ideas or thoughts you guys have? Yep. Go ahead, Mary.
So, late January, we heard that Eagle was ready to have a meeting for our residents in Holly, Michigan, but they only wanted to do it virtually. We did contact back and say that we felt that was not appropriate because we have poor internet service here in parts of the area. The other thing is that, we felt that our residents would come more readily to a meeting directly with the agency staff as opposed to on a screen. We went back and forth, even a phone call that Abby and Kelly had with me. And on March 4th, Kelly sent an email stating that the meeting was going to be held on April 16th, 6 to 8 p.m., still virtually. We did contact back and say that we thought that virtual was still not a preferred method, and that we would even look for the venue and to pay for the consultant, which was one of the reasons that was given, that they did not want to bring in the consultant from Traverse City to participate. And even our township staff stated that they felt that we could have an in-person meeting and have the consultant on a screen. And so we were still going around about that. But then on Friday, and I will say that when Kelly sent the notice about the meeting, it did describe that the presentation would contain PFAS information, MDHHS information on health effects. The contractor and an Eagle representative will give groundwater and PFAS data, gathered analysis performed, and their conclusions. But on Friday, I got an email from Abby stating that let's talk about the expectations for this meeting. We are only presenting on the groundwater investigation at the former Falk Road dump. Since many people already know about PFAS, we weren't going to present on the basic MPART slides or the DHHS PFAS health slides. Our intent is to have the consultant present on technical investigation and then allow for questions and answers. What do you think would be accomplished with an in-person meeting that can't be done with a virtual meeting? I'm struggling to understand. Thanks, Abby. So I responded, hello, Abby, Kelly, and Amy. I am not trying to be difficult, but I do not understand why residents of Holly, Michigan are expected to accept less than other residents of communities across the state have received from the agencies. After almost 5 years since our only town hall meeting and over $400,000 of state allocated funding on and around the Falk Road dump, it does not seem extreme to expect the state agencies of Eagle, MPART, and MDHHS to come and give an explanation directly to the people of Holly, Michigan about what was done and what has been learned. Frankly, I'm disappointed in your comment, Abby, that you are not even planning on showing the slides or explaining PFAS and the health effects during our meeting. I can say clearly that many people in our area do not know about PFAS. This is evident when I'm at the Holly Township Beach and I'm having to explain about the white foam that is rolling into the beach when the wind blows from the east on a regular basis, and why they shouldn't let their children or themselves come in contact with the foam. I have participated in quite a few local official calls and some town hall meetings, and they have contained the slides you're suggesting leaving out of our meeting. In addition, in September, the COG and state agencies are going to be educating the public with the PFAS Awareness Week campaign. It seems all agencies and the COG should be using every opportunity between now and September to educate those residents and community leaders they come in contact with on PFAS. Sincerely, Mary Blanchard. And then I did hear back from Abby today that Mary will go back and talk further to staff and see what we can arrange. Stay tuned. Thanks, Abby. So I do hope that we will hear something more positive in the future. Thank you.
No update from that yet, Mary. We're still talking, so.
That's okay. Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything to add or questions? If not, we're gonna give you back part of your evening. Till next meeting, have a good night, everybody.
All right.
All right, thanks,
Good
everybody.
night, everyone.
That's all.
Okay, bye.
Bye.